Is this thing working? Yes, it is. I'm the MC and I've got the mic, so I will say as much as I like, John. I have to get my position right because this thing's a camera and it's live streaming at the moment. So a warning to all of you people too that if you mill around too much, you'll end up on camera. Maybe you want to. I'd like to welcome you all here tonight. I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the country that we're meeting on. We're meeting on Gunai Kurnai country here, so I pay my respects to the Gunai Kurnai people, their elders, their ancestors, and their children who are their hope for the future. And I'd like to acknowledge any Aboriginal people who are with us tonight. My name's Will McCutcheon. I'm in the information management team in the Incident Control Centre in Bairnsdale. My job is a simple one tonight. I'm here as MC, I'm not here as the expert, but I'm certainly very pleased to be here, and we've been very proud to work in an incident team with a huge amount of cooperation between all the agencies, CFA, Forest Fire Management Victoria, police and so forth on the effort on the fires. We are going to focus tonight primarily on what we call the Bruthen 6 Mile Track Fire, which is the one nearest to town here. But I know some of you will be interested in the other fires across the estate as well, so we'll have some information about that. I'd like to apologise on behalf of Beth Roberts, our Assistant Chief Fire Officer. Beth was in the incident control team this morning and today unable to attend tonight. I'd like to particularly acknowledge James Nicholas and Christine Bittner as our new CFA captains. Thank you for being here, really appreciate it. Mr. and I, as the captain of Johnsonville's with us tonight as well. Welcome. Glenn Harris, CFA District 11 Commander. Welcome, Glenn. And a range of people from other agencies. I just want to run through how we intend the agenda to flow tonight so that you've sort of got an understanding of what we're here for, or how we're going to work. So I will do this intro. In a moment I will throw to Councillor John White, the Mayor of East Gippsland Shire, to do a welcome on behalf of East Gippsland Shire and talk a little bit about the Shire's role in proceedings. And then I'll call on Peter Brick, who's our incident controller, who will run through an explanation of this fire and the other fires in terms of their history, their current status and their future. We'll then throw to questions from the floor, and I'll try and make sure everybody gets a fair turn to ask the questions that they want to ask. And then we'll wind up after that. There will be an opportunity after we close for people to ask questions one-on-one with agency staff if you want to do that. Sometimes people are happy to ask a question from the floor, sometimes they'd prefer to have a discussion about their individual circumstances with the police, with the Shire, with the fire managers, whoever's appropriate. So there should be that opportunity as well. When Peter is presenting as incident control, I would ask that you hold your questions until question time. That'll allow him to get through the material that he wants you all to have an understanding of, and then obviously then questions, you're able to use your question time to clarify anything, but if we start running questions too early, then you'll lose your chain of thought, won't you, Peter? So with that, I'd like to particularly acknowledge and welcome Councillor John White, the Mayor of East Gippsland Shire.
Thank you, Will, and thank you for all the good work you've been doing. That's annoying. I would imagine the last few days have been incredibly stressful for all of you here tonight, living in this community with the fire so close. I'd just like to actually to begin by saying that the role of the Shire is to assist our communities in every way possible, and that includes relief centres if you are needing help, we'll have our relief centres set up. We have staff, of course, manning the emergency control centre. There's also Shire's involved with the road closures, and of course the first thing that's got to be considered there is what effect that's going to have on anyone living in the immediate zone. So discussion and assistance will be given if a road needs to be closed, i.e. to help you get out of that zone or to just understand that you are there. So we'll monitor yourself so as that you don't come to harm. Also, the sale yards are available at the moment for those people, mostly I would suggest with horses, who might be worried about those animals and leaving them, on your property. So you could take them to the sale yards where they'll be well secured and looked after. So it's all about perhaps today having that rainfall. What a relief that would have been for all of you, because it just makes you feel so comfortable, because as we were briefed only 2 weeks ago about the possibilities of these things happening because of how dry the forest is, and all you locals don't need to be told how dry it is out there. And of course once that fire started, I mean, I live at the other end of the Shire, but I could clearly see the smoke billowing up, and it would appear that a couple of days ago it was making its own weather by the plume of smoke, the big billowing mushroom. So it was burning furiously and hot, and I could understand that you would have some very anxious moments. But just to assure you that the Shire, definitely with our community workers and our leaders have got your best interests at heart and hope to help you in every way possible. All you need to do is ask. We have officers here. We have our CEO, Anthony Basford's driven out here with me this afternoon. I'm sure that if you have any questions, Shane Turner is sort of as well as being the man on the spot. He actually lives here, as you probably know. And he's, through your questions, I'm sure you'd want to direct questions towards those people who have got the knowledge of where the fire is at the moment and how it's performing, and obviously the parks people would have those answers. So I'd probably pass the microphone on and then get you to ask your questions after the next speaker as to what might be your immediate requests or queries. But just be assured that the Shire is absolutely 100% behind our communities, and also wish you all the best. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. So my name's Peter Brick. I'm the Incident Controller for the Incident Control Centre in Bairnsdale, and we're managing a whole range of fires across the district, and in particular the Bruthen 6 Mile track fire. So my normal role, I'm normally based in Swifts Creek. I work for Forest Fire Management Victoria, based up there. I'm the Operations Manager and look after the work centre at Swifts Creek, Now and at Bairnsdale. So pretty familiar with the country here and all the staff that work across the footprint of this area. So as you're aware, on Thursday evening, or late afternoon Thursday through Thursday night, we had a large dry lightning storm move across the state. If you recall, Thursday was a code red day in the northwest of the state, the first one we'd declared in over 10 years. So that really set the scene for what was likely to happen as that front moved across. So as panned out as expected, we had a number of lightning strike fires start across the landscape, and we've got one of the maps here. You can come and have a closer look afterwards. We had 20 fires start that afternoon. We managed to get to a couple of them straight away. So the Mount Little Dick fire just out of Bruthen here, that was a great response from CFA and Forest Fire Management Victoria crews to get on top of that one overnight. And then as Friday progressed, we then detected a lot more fires across the landscape. So we continued to respond to those, as you would have seen, and you would have seen aircraft and perhaps machinery and crews moving up and down the roads. We focused then on the fires that were closer to communities, and one of those being the Bruthen 6 Mile track fire. We had a strong focus on the fire at the Mitchell River National Park, where that had potential to run out of the park into communities. and we had a strong focus up around W Tree and Butcher's Ridge at the fire up there. And then as things progressed, you might have seen across the weekend, there was quite a lot of firefighting effort put into this Bruthen 6-mile track fire. We had a number of fixed-wing bombers working on that at various times throughout the day. We had the large air tankers that are currently stationed in Canberra and Sydney. We requested them as part of a national resource, and they would have flown in. I'm not sure if anyone saw, I think it was the DC-10 came through. There's a few nods of fairly impressive aircraft to drop retardant. But despite our best efforts, containing these fires has proven really difficult. And as John alluded to, and as no doubt you're all aware, the dryness created by the last 3 years of drought has really taken a toll on the forest. So we've got very dry fuels, and when we're talking about fuels, it's the fine fuels, the litter on the ground, the shrubby layer, the barks up the trees, and then indeed the entire trees in this sort of scenario. So all of that is available to burn. And so what does that mean for us as firefighters? It's really challenging to put out these fires. So what we saw with the retardant drops, and particularly those planes and the large air tankers coming in, that we were just struggling to hold that fire on the weekend. So it was a relatively mild day, days on Saturday, Sunday. The retardant, which normally would give us, 1 day, 2 days in a good season, retardant will last on the ground for 3 or 4 days. We were down to hours that retardant was lasting and having an effect. So we really battled, and the crews battled all day, Saturday, Sunday. We've had crews out all night as well, both the nights. We injected some additional CFA strike teams in on Sunday in preparation for what happened yesterday. So we knew yesterday was going to be a challenging day for us, and the fire, as you would have all seen, really developed its own big plume and column, a pyrocumulus column out of that. And so that fire started to progress towards the Bruthen Now Road. So as that happened, we did get spot fires. We had some reports from the aircraft that the fire had spotted over the Bruthen Now Road. So at that point, we made the decision to close that road basically between Bruthen and the Red Knob. So we took that action to try and allow firefighters in there to safely deal with those spots, but also to protect any travelling public, so we didn't get anyone trapped on the road. Fortunately, the crews on the ground and the aircraft were able to contain those spots. We were able to confirm there was no spots south of the road. And then as the afternoon progressed, the wind turned around to a southerly, southeasterly, southwesterly. We got a bit of everything yesterday. And the fire started to then progress to the north. And it really, and you can see on the map here how it's travelled out to the east. And when that occurred, we were getting spotting towards Buchan South. So at that point, we made the decision to close the Buchan South road between the Red Knob and Buchan South. Again, for community protection, we wanted to make sure we didn't get anyone stuck on a road. Then a further wind change shift occurred, and this is where the real damage occurred, was when the column spun around and all the embers and burning debris, bark mixed up in that column, and it would have been punching 3,000 or 4,000 metres up into the air, so a really tall column. As that spun around and the wind pushed it across back to the northwest there, that's when it then threatened into Ramrod Creek and the Great Alpine Road. So at that point, then we moved our roadblocks across to that side of the fire, and we were able to quickly close the Great Alpine Road to, again, at Bruthen there and at Ensay, to again make sure we didn't have anyone trapped on the road when that fire came out. And so that's how it played out throughout the evening. That fire did eventually reach the Great Alpine Road as expected. Some of you may have seen the footage. There's a few photos getting around. I'm suspecting some people snuck in for some good photos, but luckily got out okay. But pretty, impressive's probably the wrong word, but it was quite extreme fire behaviour that those photos that I saw up on Facebook showed me. And really that just indicated the intensity of the fire, and as I heard one person put it, was like Armageddon in there. So that's done a fair bit of damage in that area around the Great Alpine Road. So it's a section of a couple of kilometres, but it has done a fair bit of damage. So that's what the main focus for the firefighters today has been, is in trying to get that road reopened. we've got crews in there now. We've used a skidder to brush off any of the fallen trees that are across the road, because the road was fully blocked. And now they're just working on dealing with the hazardous trees. So the other part of the fire and the long-term drought is that all the trees, as I mentioned, all the fuel's available to burn. So what the crews are reporting into me is that standing timber and trees that have got just small defects in them, which normally can survive fire, under these conditions, they're catching alight quite readily, and because they're still mostly solid trees, they're burning quite well, and the potential is they're going to fall down across the road. So that's been a main focus for us today. The crews are still out there now. They'll continue to work through the night in dealing with those hazardous trees, because that's certainly one of our key priorities, is to get that road open. Likewise, at the W Tree fire around Butcher's Ridge, the Galantaby Road is closed there, so they're doing a similar thing over there, and we're really keen to get that road open as well as soon as possible. The other thing to tell you with this fire, as well as running towards the Great Alpine Road there, it has thrown spot fires, and we've struggled to map them a little bit today for although the sun's sort of come out now, but most of the day, you know, we had those showers and low clouds, so the aircraft can't fly in those conditions. We did manage, one of the Firebirds did manage to sneak up through the cloud earlier and have a bit of a look around. But we're hopeful in the next day or so we'll get a much better handle on where the spot fires are. But they've spotted all the way up to Playgrounds Track, for those that know that area. At this stage, we don't think there's any fire in Mount Elizabeth, but that's certainly a real concern, and watch out for us if we've got any fire in there. The fire to the east is around Kenny's Road. We think it has gone across the road there, but we're confident we can get a machine and track that around Kenny's Road. The southern part of the fire is all mostly held, and you can certainly see this, some might think, a strange curve there. That's Reformatory Road. That, for many of you might remember, we did a fuel reduction burn in there in part of this area last year, this year, sorry. It feels like last year, in April. So that's assisted there in the containment on that southern boundary. There's still work ahead for this fire before we can call it contained. We're going to need to establish some sort of control line on the northern perimeter. We've got the river flowing through there. It's going to be a challenge for us to try and contain that fire in close, following that fire edge. So we're probably going to have to bring it out to some of the main tracks so that we can actually safely work there. So that will continue over the coming days and potentially weeks. So I guess it's a heads up that this is not a normal sort of fire season, and I know it's only the last week of November, but we're really struggling to contain these fires. So it is going to take us a bit of time to get around that. So you are going to expect to see smoke in the air. It cleared today, fortunately, but there is a real potential that as soon as it warms up again, and it could be as early as tomorrow afternoon, we could start to see smoke coming back out of this fire. It'll slowly keep creeping. It'll move around with the wind. Whichever way the wind's going, it'll want to push it through because the fuels are so dry. And I've no doubt that this little bit of rain won't take long at all to dry out. Of course, in addition to this fire, I've still got another 6 or 7 fires to be managing with the resources. So we are really stretched at the moment. We've got crews have come across from southwest Victoria, from the Otways. We've got 2 task forces from around the Port Phillip region. We've got CFA support from District 11, I think District 10 and Newborough, whichever district Newborough's in. They came up last night. So we're getting some good support in, but we're spread pretty thin. So we've got nearly 7,000 hectares of fire up at W Tree, Butcher's Ridge. That's punched through across the Snowy River into the Snowy River National Park. We've got a really large fire now at Ensay. That last night burned into the back of Ensay along the private property from Ensay, Reedy Flat down to Holstons. That one is a watch one for you as well. That's one not to take your eyes off. That fire spotted on the other side towards Mount Elizabeth. So we've really now got a situation where we've got fire to the south of Mount Elizabeth and fire to the north. So that's a real concern for us. So again, that fire in a similar way to the 6 Mile track fire is going to take us a bit of time to contain, work out a strategy to get around that, all in this context of a really dry environment. So, you know, we're going to expect that fire to continue to move as well. And certainly earlier today, NSA wasn't getting any of the showers or rain that we were getting here. I've also got resources. Our district goes a long way north, as you could appreciate. So we've got resources all up at Glen Wills. There's a fire up there near Mittagundy, Shannon Vale. So we're trying to work to contain that one as well. And crews did a great job yesterday to keep the fire out of Mittagundy, of the camp up there. So I guess that's a bit of an overview of the whole situation. As I said, we've gone to a bit of the strategy where we're heading with this fire. It is going to be with us for a few days and potentially weeks ahead. You'll continue to see firefighters working in the area. We've got crews coming from Now and Bairnsdale. The away crews are camped mostly in Bairnsdale. So I think some of the feeding is coming out of the Bruthen pub. So there's a real mix. You'll see the vehicles moving around. We've got a lot of machinery on the roads as well, so be aware of that. We're shifting, where we need to. Shifting the heavy dozers and excavators and harvesters, floating them from one side of the fire to the other so we can affect the construction of the fire breaks. You'll continue to see the aircraft come and go. They won't be there all the time. A bit like all the other resources, they're stretched. We've got to resolve all these fires with the aircraft. But you will continue to see the helicopters coming and go. If we start to get runs of fire, we'll bring in the fire bombers again. We have got access to the LATs, the large air tankers, if it comes to that as well. I guess the final thing to touch on is some of the impact on private property. So the fire did run through part of the properties there at Ramrod Creek and also into Kurnai Park. So there is some damage there. We're still just getting the final assessment of what that is. So certainly, I'd expect perhaps some fences may have been burnt. We're starting to construct a line through part of this private property so we can contain that edge of the fire. Look, I think that's probably a pretty good overview of where we're at. So we'll see whether we want to go to questions now.
Just before we do go to questions, a bit off the cuff, but if any of the other agencies want a couple of minutes to contribute, that's fine, police or ambulance or others. So we certainly should have time for that either now or later if need be. With that, thank you very much, Peter, and I guess your overview also needs to be considered in context that we have colleagues in northeastern Victoria who also got hammered by the same lightning storm. And so if these maps were slightly bigger, they'd show a whole nother set of fires in northeast Victoria. With that, I'll throw to questions. So just, if you can speak up loudly, we'll see how we go without all the complexity of trying to hand a microphone around. And if I'll try and restate your question for the sake of the online audience too, if need be. I've got a question here.
Just for community information, are these maps available to download online and put up and display in any notice boards?
I have brought some pre-printed ones here. So we'll make sure that there's a community map available that you can download. Yes, good question. But it's a good reminder for me to tell you that on the dais there are maps of both the overview map and the other, which people who are associated with CFA sheds or whatever, they might like to grab those tonight, so they've got immediate access.
Just on mapping, Will, I might just make a point that on your Vic Emergency app, you will see a fire boundary. Just be aware, on days like yesterday, it's really challenging for us to keep up to date when the fire's moving so quick, to keep that boundary up to date. We can keep the warnings and advice up to date much quicker than we can get that line data into that app. So you might see the warning, and you might be able to see the fire and say, oh, why isn't that? They haven't even updated the map. That's probably because you know ahead of we do that fire's actually moved to somewhere. We just haven't got that intel yet. We have the aircraft flying over, radioing back in grid references to us, but you may be seeing it live before the team can actually upload that information.
Peter, what do you suggest if people are seeing smoke or flames? What should they do?
Yeah, if you're seeing smoke or flames of something, a fire that you know is not something part of that you think we already know about, by all means ring 000. If it's a separate fire altogether and your life and property is under threat, definitely call 000.
Other questions?
I work in the emergency department at the hospital. Last night we had two groups of people who were presenting. There was one group who spent the night in our waiting room or in the car park because they didn't know where to evacuate to, so they stayed there. So that's one point, some people don't know where to go, and we didn't actually know where to send them, so we just bed boarded them there. Then there was another group who were coming in with respiratory problems. Some known asthmas, some never had a breathing problem ever before, but they were quite unwell. So just people need to keep an eye out for their health as well.
Yeah, thanks for that. That's a really good reminder, and certainly thank you for looking after those people last night. So two things, the messaging around potential impacts on your health. As you said, if you've got a known condition, asthma or something, make sure, if you didn't already, I think yesterday's your warning, get your asthma management plan in order. Know what you're going to do if you're dealing with a smoky environment, because in all likelihood we're going to face that more this summer. If it presents out of the blue, unexpectedly, by all means, attend the emergency department. Again, ring 000 for an ambulance. That's okay. And in terms of what to do, if and Shane might be going to jump in here as well, but the message all along has been have your fire plan ready. So already, once the alert goes out, it's really too late to be thinking, what am I going to do? Where am I going to go? You need to be thinking about that now. And certainly Bruthen's had a good wake-up call yesterday. NSA has W3 and Butcher's Ridge for the last 3 years have had wake-up calls, so they're a bit more probably a bit more familiar with fire. But really, have a think about where you are going to go, because the reality is we won't be able to open relief centres at the drop of a hat when we get these really rapidly moving fires. So have a plan. You're much better off going to family or friends than sitting in a hall like this, because it's not going to be particularly comfortable, hot and stuffy. I can't imagine you get much sleep in a hall like this. So think about your plan. Where can you go, and plan that ahead of time, so that when the alert comes out, you're not trying to run around and think, where am I going to go?
Yeah, thanks, Peter. Council's role is to consider relief centres and discuss with the incident controller about whether we need a relief centre. And essentially what they are is just a place for somewhere for people that have been impacted by the fire. And so usually we look at whether the fire is going to impact on private property. If it's not, if there's going to be travellers and people like that, we make the assumption that they've got somewhere to go or they can return back. So it makes it very difficult, also because when you've got a community and communities like Omeo and around here, when you actually set up a relief centre, you've already got people will go there and expect everything for free. I appreciate that and I'm across that. But then you've also got accommodation places that are still trying to actually make a business and a lifestyle out of their business, and suddenly we go and open up something that's for free and they're sitting there going, well, we're impacted by these fires, no one's coming here, and then they go and open a free place for everyone to go to. So we've got to try and play a very fine balancing line, and we sort of look, and especially when we're in a time where we're in low tourists at the moment, those businesses are all struggling. So it's a fine line that we actually play.
It's more about the people's safety in the area rather than making a business. I mean, I understand people need to make business and make money.
Yeah.
But it's more important that those people have somewhere to go, not thinking,
Yeah. But
My situation, I couldn't afford to go to a motel.
yeah, but equally, it's about making those plans and thinking that through those plans in your own mind at an earlier time as well. Yep.
But being a local for a long time, working in the health sector, I think we also need to consider that sometimes a short-term emergency relief can be essential. There's very few alternative accommodations available in our community if you don't have a lot of family. Now also, I'm sure many people are under the same situation, that we are going to be, as you said, constantly flipping from, you know, watch and act to the different codes all the time. And it's very hard to, as we all know, continue to live your life and decide, am I going home to Bruthen today, or am I trying to find somewhere else to stay for the night? And I realise this is going to go on for many, many months. We all knew this was going to happen. But is there an opportunity in this community that people can at least evacuate to a short-term stop if we get an unexpected, like we did just recently? So they go, right, we're evacuating to this hub, and then we're all dispersing from there within 24 hours. Is that something the council has to do today?
So, council for quite a few years has been embarking on doing what we call local incident management plans. And there's actually one here, there's one for Bruthen, which identifies this as this location as an assembly area. Those plans, I think they're in the store, they're readily available there, they're on the Shire website. And that's one of the purposes of those is it gives you the ability to actually come to a place, be together, assess what to do, get information, because in the Incident Control Centre we try and get information to those locations because we're aware of those plans, and then we actually make sure that that there's protection around those locations as well. So probably in the future, and usually when we talk to the information officers, we actually put in a notification there that activate your local incident management plan for that community. So there's plenty of the plans in the shop, and also if we need to readdress them or have a look at them, we're more than happy to come through and redo that or revise the plan. Yes?
In the shop, you're talking about the general store?
Yep.
And in the shop, you're talking about there is a name that we can contact, so we have emergency relief and there'll be someone there when we call.
Well, yeah, we can work on something like that. We'll take the information. Look, I've been doing emergency management for over 40 years, and I've never ever claimed to get anything right. It's always a learning process. No.
Stage? We haven't got that.
Sorry, what do you want? What do you actually want?
So the question was, is there in the shop, is there some, in that incident control package, is there someone we can call that will give us immediate assistance? If that's what the lady's pointing out and this lady up here pointed out.
Yeah,
Is
not
that
in the future, now, as in like
now?
yesterday.
Yeah, and
Okay.
from now, this point forward, you're
Yep.
saying the Shire, there is going to be someone available for emergency relief now in Bruthen?
No.
You're saying we're on our
No.
own. The Shire's not going to help.
The Shire, we'll try and help wherever we can. Yeah, we'll try wherever we can, but yeah, no, we'll try wherever we can, but it's a matter of getting it there. We can't be there at 1 and 2 o'clock in the morning. That's it. That's the main thing. Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
For those who don't know me, I'm Matt Jenkins. I'm with the Highway Patrol at Orbost, but the last few years I've basically been the evacuation manager and TMP manager for the last few fires. Where you're going from with emergency relief, as the evacuation manager, we will not set up a relief centre generally until we call evacuate. That's when we'll look at the Shire, contacting them to get an evacuation centre up and running. Until that point, until that trigger point, which is basically the last stand, there will be no relief centres. You are required to have your bushfire plans in place. You need to make sure that you are prepared if you're going to live in these areas. You go into places like Bem River, Malakuta, even up to Goongra, they don't get evacuation centres. They get stuck because there's one road in, one road out. They know their LIMP plan or their local emergency plan is to come to their local Ben River, the pub. The CFA will generally attend the pub and provide information. So just because you're being told this is a warning, we recommend you leave. That is your local plan. You will not have a relief centre to go to unless we are predicting extreme levels after that. So that's when we'll open up a relief centre. So,
in the situation last night, when people were stopped from going through the roadblock, going up the Omeo Highway, they weren't told that they couldn't, that it was an evacuation, but they weren't allowed to go back through there. And now in the situation which these people are talking about, I think that the Shire and maybe the Bruthen community of interested members should actually look at, in the situation of a day like yesterday when people can't go back through the roadblock to their own home, that there does need to be Shire input to improve this situation, because this situation is going to get worse.
exactly, and
so
that's
we
where...
need to make this interim thing to actually look at what these people's concerns are about, and maybe form a committee to look at what Bruthen has got in place and what can be improved on.
Yeah, and that's exactly right. That's your local plan. Unfortunately, fires... No, that's right. That's right.
You know, people discuss what could be improved in the situation when people can't get back, even to say now because the road might be blocked or something. In that situation, we should be perhaps providing some place, you know, so the hall will be open that night, you know, so that there will be someone here, and it's from the Shire for them to employ someone to actually help it rather than just relying on the CFA, because the CFA are going to be busy doing their own thing.
No, that's right, and that's where the local plans come in. Unfortunately, roads can be blocked for whatever reason at any one time, so that you still need to have your own local plan in case you can't get home.
And perhaps we should be thinking about, you know, providing something, asking for assistance in the community to provide something a little bit more.
Or you need to, that's right, or you need to start looking at other people in the community and set up your own plan. If I can't get home, am I able to stay in your shed? Can I stay at your place? They need to be your local plans. We can't plan those for you because obviously sometimes there's no evacuation. It's only advice. The roads will be closed for safety. Unfortunately, you need to have those thoughts in your head now. If I leave or I'm not at home and the road gets closed, where am I going to go? What am I going to do? This doesn't only relate to fires, it relates to storm damage, floods. They're all common for us here. Sometimes you will get stuck. You need to have those plans in place. You need to think well and truly ahead on those. We can't just rely on an evacuation centre to be set up. They take anywhere up to 4 to 5 hours sometimes to get them running. So please have a look at your local incident management plans. Update your... Some of you may not have a fire plan or an emergency plan. Think about it. Get it up to date. Also, with your road closures, like I said, they will be closed at different times. Please, please, I know it's an inconvenience and it's trouble. Please obey the road closures. We had incidents today where people went around them, and funny enough, they got stuck in the fire zone because trees were down and falling down around them. With the weather the way it is, our bush is struggling. We've had fire damage, we've now got water. They will drop at a hat. I've just come back from the New South Wales fires, and it was phenomenal to see what it was doing up there. So please, we don't shut them just to annoy people. We don't shut them just so the fire trucks have free rein. We shut them because it's unsafe. We do try, and the incident controller will back it up, we do try to get the roads open ASAP because we know everyone needs to get back in. So, but just please be patient with the road closures. There's not a lot more we can do with them.
In this area, you should have a bag in your car with 2 days worth of clothes in it. It's just common sense. It's not up to council to provide you somewhere to go. Everyone knows friends and family within the local area. If you've got closed for 2 days and can't get home, it's something that no one can predict. Just think about it yourselves and have something ready. We live in town, but we've still got a bag in the car with 2 days worth of clothes for everyone.
Sure.
Who's actually seen the local incident management plan or got a copy? It was sent out a couple of years ago via post to all the householders. There are copies in the shop, but can I just have an indication of who has got a copy? Yeah. Righto, so we've probably got about 100 people here that haven't. What I might request, Shane, is if we could get 150 copies made. We've got a community market here on Saturday. I'm going to dodge Annie Pearce into it. She's handing some stuff out for the CFA, and we'll get those management plans, a copy for everybody, so that they can take them home and start working on things.
And we will get copies. Sorry, we will get copies in at the neighbourhood house, and we also have quite a bit of CFA fire ready pamphlets also at both 36 Main Street, and will be Thursday, Friday here next door at the GLCH.
Just asking too, back in the day, the footy ground used to be in Bruthen Refuge. After that, it was decided that was a staging area and we weren't actually allowed to use that, the footy ground. So what's the status on the footy ground now?
So the football grounds, if it all really turns kind of south, the football ground is going to be the most likely location for heavy machinery, forest fire management, appliances, CFA appliances, mechanical appliances and the like. It is also a landing zone for aeromedical evacuation and also a refuel point. So within the LIMP, the management plan, it identifies that the football ground isn't the most appropriate location for people to assemble, and it actually identifies this hall right here as that first kind of place that you go in town once it's been opened up. It's not a refuge centre. There's a lot of legal technicalities about what are safer places and all the rest of it. The football oval is not one. I don't even think the hall is classified as one, but it is certainly more defendable if we had to put resources around it.
Thank you very much, James, for that clarification. I'll go with the lady at the back, if I may. You've got a question?
Can we get our tip open more regular than what it is? Personally, my partner was turned away yesterday with green list, and he was just helping a friend finish cleaning up. I'm sure there's other people in the community that still have green waste to remove. We've all been told for weeks to repair. It just happens suddenly.
Okay. Do you want to respond to that, Anthony? Or?
Thank you for the question, Anthony Bassett, CEO of the Shire. It has been raised by by a number of people, and both the local transfer stations have been opened up, or are being opened up, extra hours to cater for additional material that's coming through. That.
And that was via Facebook.
Yeah, appreciate that, but probably I think, as the police officer said, that these things should have been done by now, and what we can do is we can respond. We know that people have got extra material now. There will be a spike. We are opening that, but it is really important that people get on top of that as quickly as they can, and they will be open as much as they can be.
Question for.
Been done in Bruthen this year at all?
Yes. Yeah. So I'm aware of that. There were notices the inspections were done and the notices were issued about a week ago. They've got, sorry? Yeah, no need to. The contractor is currently on his way here. We've got one contractor that actually comes through here. I was talking to him yesterday, and he has got this as a priority. He'll be working in this area by the end of the week. No, that's because he actually started, when he actually started doing the slashing, this end of the Shire had very minimal grass growth. So to get more dollars for value out of the contractor, we actually started him at Kalimna and worked him east because that's the way he goes. And then he started across at Lindenow and then has come back this way. It's done twice yearly. Yes, it is. Oh, yep.
The lady in green in the front had a question.
Road closures and my question is about road closures and where's the best place to find out the information when they're closed fastest? Because I know the Vic Roads is quite slow.
Perhaps I can answer that as readily as anyone. We do have Vic Roads, or now Regional Roads Victoria. I'm trying to learn the new terminology. Regional Roads people with us in the Incident Management Centre. So we have an emergency management team that sits beside the incident control team. And so they're very close to the process. There's still a little bit of a delay associated with getting information up. I appreciate that, but it's done as quickly as it can. And so around the emergency management team table, we have police, Regional Roads Victoria, and the fire effort all collaborating on when the roads are ready to, need to be closed on one hand or are ready to be reopened. Vic Roads website is the go-to for road closures. We do try and keep information in our advice messages and watch and act messages, but nonetheless they refer you back to the Vic Roads website anyway because that's the best point of truth.
Convoy going from Bruthen up to Enstone and back again, is that just tonight or is that happening tomorrow or is it just a cut-off? Like what's happening with that?
Yeah, that's been running since 2 o'clock today apparently. I didn't know about that. The last run back to Omeo will be at 8 o'clock tonight. Then it'll shut down for the night. Obviously we end up using a lot of resources and it takes it away from other firefighting duties. So tomorrow morning probably throw it back to the incident controller when they issue their next advice message or information session. They'll be able to do it, but at this stage we're hoping the road tomorrow afternoon. I won't give you a time, but tomorrow afternoon.
Matthew, you might like to explain that's actually a bypass around the closed section for a small vehicle.
Oh yes, definitely. That's no heavy vehicles or trailers either. It's only small cars just to get people into the community. It's a bypass road. It's not really designed for big vehicles. Peter?
Yeah, that's right. And certainly if it's safe to do so, we'll keep the crews working tonight out there on the Has tree work so we can get the road open as soon as possible. There's one up near the door there, Will.
The Great Alpine rallies this weekend, has that been cancelled? Or so the roads are free for residents and emergency services?
I've just received an email from the organisers. They've liaised with Phil. The decision's been to cancel the rally this Sunday, so we will not proceed.
A lady in the doorway at the back there.
I have a quiet voice, so I'm sorry if it sounds like I'm yelling. I actually have 3 questions, and I'll get them all out before we start. Could we get an update on the fire up near Haunted Street?
Yes.
Second question is, are you able to talk about whether there's been any predictions about any of these fires joining and what the implications of that may be? And the third one is, and I suspect it may be relevant to other people as well, I actually have family stuck in between the 2 road closures on the Galanaki Road and also north of Galanaki. When are we predicting that road will reopen? If it doesn't, is there any way for us to be able to get things to those people because there's no produce or anything up there?
Did you get those 3, Peter?
I'm trying to remember them, but so the one Haunted Stream, so that's the Martha Vale Barmouth Spur fire. So similar scenario, started on Thursday night. So that was actually holding pretty well on the Barmouth Spur track. If you've been in there, we've done some work with our D6 in there about 18 months ago, working on that track. So that's actually provided really beneficial to us there. But then yesterday's condition, it did develop into a big column on that one. This was actually the one we predicted would actually get really large yesterday, but of all the like all of them, they had predictions they'd all get large. This one actually didn't get that large, so just some local topography perhaps, maybe the fuels were just slightly damper, maybe the winds weren't quite the same. So that one hasn't grown too much. However, you're right, it's in a really risky spot, so it's certainly one to keep watching on. We're developing the strategy now of how we can contain that one. To the best of our knowledge, and again, it was a bit foggy and cloudy to look in there today, it hasn't got into the haunted stream area. So that'll be a big plus. If we can keep fire out of there, we've got a much better chance of containment. So over coming days, a bit like the 6 Mile one, we'll look at what containment lines we've already got in place there, which ones we might need to widen or construct, and then look at, there might be a bit of burning out options in there to try and contain that one. But it's certainly one that it does concern us. It's been on our top priority list of all the 18 fires. We prioritise them all. This one always comes up in the top sort of 4 or 5 fires because of the potential for, under the normal sort of summer conditions, you get the strong northwesterly winds, potential to push that one down towards Bruthen and communities. So that one remains a real focus for us over the coming sort of days and weeks. Yep. So yes, the honest answer is yes, that's a real concern for us. We can't rule that out, given the movement of these fires over the last 24 hours, the dry fuels that we've got out there, and the potential for more fires to occur. We're only in the last week of November. Traditionally, we get a lot of our lightning strikes and summer storms start in December, so we're kind of a little bit early. So we've still got to get through summer. So there's 2 risks to us: the current fires continuing to burn, but also additional fires from lightning strikes that we haven't even had yet. In the short term, the ones that we're most concerned about is really understanding where the spot fires are north and south of Mount Elizabeth. So Mount Elizabeth is a high fuel load area, but also a really high value natural area and cultural area to us. So we're really concerned about what the fires are doing in there. At this stage, we don't think we've got fire in that actual reserve area. We've asked for a rappel crew to come in tomorrow and try and attack one of the spot fires near McLean's track, or the Mount Elizabeth Jeep track. If we can get around that one and then get around the stuff that's crossed over at Holston's and keep that to the north there, that reduces the probability of chance of these fires merging. As I said, this one here, the Barmouth Spur, that not going to say I could rule it out 100%, but that's probably more a concern on this side of the western side of the Great Alpine Road. The other one I will mention, and just in terms of merging, Will alluded to some fires in the northeast. They're facing similar concerns, and whilst that's a fair way from your communities we're managing and dealing with sort of Omeo North, that's a real concern to them. Fires are burning on the side of Mount Bogong, and there's a potential that they'll merge into one and head towards the Shannonvale fire we've got. It's a really dynamic situation this summer we're facing. Over to Galantepe, that road is closed. However, the information I had today is that locals are able to get through, and we're allowing them back through. So if they just talk to the roadblock there, they can come in and out of that one.
I've got a lady in the front who has had her hand up for a while, so over to you. And I think we've got a dog with a question over here too, so I look forward to getting to that one.
I'm just wondering, walking the rail trails, now I understand there's debris everywhere, but the rail trail from pretty much Mossy Face going all the way up to right through the tunnel going towards Johnsonville, there is debris everywhere. who manages that? Because quite honestly, if it gets into any of those rail trails, particularly that one, it's going to become an absolute lightning strike all the way through. And the debris laying around, trees falling down, you know, with all these winds and everything, it's an absolute mess.
So the rail trails, there's a committee of management that looks after the rail trail, so we can get in touch with them and have a chat to them if you like. Probably it's a good segue to some of our messaging at the moment is around on these high fire risk days. Don't be in the parks and forests, and I think that would apply to rail trails as well. Oh well, yeah, and a lot of us do. But if you don't need to be there, and things like rail trails on days when there is potential for embers, you know, it's a good spot to avoid. Yeah. But no, it's a good one.
The other day, and there was certainly a vehicle who was going along to try and shift trees that had actually fallen over the trail and so on. So I think they are around.
Yeah, but hopefully, because particularly the one from Swan Reach, Mossy Face Road, going down towards Mossy Face, and then coming from the other side of the road, walking up, as if going to Johnsonville, is just and I know there's been a lot of winds, but there is just,
I think,
and you've got property on either side. If it gets anywhere around there, it'll just wind tunnel all the way down there.
I think the point is well made, and I take my understanding from what you're saying is that your concern is not only for rail trail users but also for adjoining properties. So, yeah, I think we've got time for a couple more questions. I had a hand over here somewhere and I've lost track. Was there somebody over in this part of the room that had their hand up? Sir, with the hat on, was that you?
Emergency Act, you only had 1 year of monitoring the 6 mile track up until Saturday afternoon. Is that right?
No, that's not actually what was out there. I'll check on what was reporting. So the app picks up data from different sources, and it might be just how we're deploying resources and how CFA deploys resources on those sort of days. Once we've got big fires, so strike teams, for example, might just appear as one resource. We'd have to check on that sort of stuff. Delp, when we send a whole crew, which might be 5 vehicles, the dozer, sometimes that gets grouped up in the data. So certainly there was more than one vehicle on that fire. And that one's since we started. Yeah, so that one might have been reflective of as in a whole group of vehicles there on that day. But there certainly was more than one vehicle there the whole way through.
Just to add something more, you're all part of the community here, but at this stage with a lull in the fire front, you are not helpless. And the gentleman over here made a comment which was very pertinent. If you're working in Bensdale or perhaps you've got a job in Lakes, no trouble to take an overnight bag, some toiletries with you in the boot of your car if you can't get home. And those of you who actually just live here permanently, perhaps don't have a job, go home and pack a few belongings so that if you have to evacuate quickly, you don't turn up at any of the centres with just the clothes on your back. I think that's a fair comment to to be a bit prepared or be part of the fire plan. So if you do those things and you're prepared, you've got a little bit of time now, but who knows what the weather will do in a few days.
It's our other family member they've left at home. I know Meg's from Faithful Paws had approached the Shire to offer her facility on some sort of relief basis, but I don't know if Pound is available for anything, because people will risk trying to stay to bed,
You'll understand that just saying the sale yards, well, obviously they don't hold dogs, but certainly horses and things that people would be very concerned about, that's available. I think
be organised for something like that, because they've got quite, obviously they have got cages and everything, but surely there's areas there that people can go with their dogs.
that would be something to take on notice, because it hasn't got through to me. But if we can check that out and maybe put it in a press release, put it on the internet for you to see if there was a possibility. But that's certainly a good idea. I can imagine just what it'd be like to. Yes, absolutely. But if these people have made that offer, it's most generous. So we can check that out.
Done the right thing there. Look, thank you everybody for your attention. We really appreciate it. We really appreciate you coming out on an evening to hear from the horse's mouth, so to speak. We will wind up the group questions now. As I said at the beginning, there will be a small amount of time now that if you've got particular questions that you want to put to the fire control agencies, the CFA, the Shire Police or whoever about your particular concerns. Does it need to be asked to the floor? He will be available.
They're not updated enough. But back in 2006-7, when the fires were coming closer to Bruthen, there was actually, you could look up the maps and there'd be maps of where it was, but where the wind was going to be coming forward the next day, and it actually had a predicted line of where the fire would go. I think that if that app was reintroduced, so everybody's got the phones and they do check these things regularly, living in a place like Bruthen, it gives you a lot more sort of, idea of what the predicted weather is going to be rather than working it out for yourself. It was a great thing that they had, and it would show where the proposed line of the fire was predicted to be. And I just thought that it'd be great if that was reintroduced right this week, so that people that are interested in any of these fires, you just had a predicted thing, even if it was done every 2 days.
But then, as he said, the fire's creating its own weather, and it's just as unpredictable too. Like, in any instant, it can just change.
But they have, there'll be a southeasterly weather change, there'll be a northerly. That is what is proposed for the next day through the Bureau of Meteorology, and it does give you a little bit more indication whether you're at high risk or...
I think we understand what you're saying, so perhaps, Peter, if you can respond on that.
Yeah, so I think I can say we won't be able to update the app. That's way out of my control to... I don't even know what the program would be, but that's something we could put forward, and a suggestion to the state team at Emergency Management Victoria. They manage the app and what data feed they take for that. In terms of prediction maps, we do some internal prediction maps. There's a whole lot of assumptions that go with our predictions, but you're right. There's probably some scope for, on certain days, we could give there that general wind direction. Is it a southwesterly wind change? Where will that head? Because that, we might be able to get some, probably not onto the app, but maybe on the occasions, maybe a community newsletter might be able to show some of that stuff if it's appropriate. Because I know some people, it is a bit confusing sometimes the way the Weather Bureau reports the wind. So a northwesterly wind will blow the fire to the southeast, and then that does create a bit of confusion. So sometimes an arrow is a pretty simple way to show it. So we can look at that if it's appropriate sometimes.
Area at the moment around Bruthen, is that a prediction zone, or is that just it's got nothing to do with prediction zone?
No, that polygon, the yellow ones, and I think orange for watch and axe and a red for emergency warning, that indicates the towns, I guess, not necessarily the fire size or where we think the fire is going to end up. We draw those polygons to make sure we pick up the towns that we want to get the message to, so that if you're in a town where the polygon cuts across, it'll then ping your phone if you've set up a watch for that area. Yeah, so that's just it's not an indication of the fire or the size or the extent where we think it's going to go. It's just to capture the towns and the localities in that area.
Set up for incident controls Facebook it, and then everybody just send it off to friends, and anybody who has got Facebook could just...
I'm sorry, I think we probably need to cut
yeah,
off
we'll
the
wrap it up.
conversation now. I do understand the points that are being made, and but we can't stay all night. Peter and I actually have to get back to do handover to night shift and all the other things that have to happen this evening. So once again, thank you. Thank you particularly to Blanche Evans and Shane Turner from East Gippsland Shire for helping us get set up tonight. And thank you very much to the Bruthen community and CFA for helping set up the hall tonight. I really appreciate it. Finally, I'd like to do a thank you to our speakers, and if you wouldn't mind putting your hands together to say thank you.